We have a few more things to talk about here today, and one of them is a topic that we've heard from some listeners about. I've mentioned them a little bit, I think in passing, or you did, when talking about retro figures, but it's becoming a little bit of a story. PowerTown, which was the figure line launched by the former executives, I believe, from Remco in the 80s,
Yes.
along with Greg Gagne of AWA fame, Minnesota fame in the 80s, 70s, and Magnum TA, legendary Mid-Atlantic star of the 80s. And they were starting up a figure line. I heard about it because I heard from several people who were approached by them who actually asked me what I thought of the contract and asked me what I thought of the deals. And at the same time, or maybe even before then, you had heard of them.
Yeah, I did, Lance. Go ahead.
But the story now is that here we are a few years down the line. They put out a series of figures, a few additional ones after that, announced a deal with TNA, announced a series of Remco, 1980s Remco-ish figures, announced the second wave of their original line, took pre-orders on everything, and there has been no communication. No figures have arrived. Dates where figures were promised to arrive by or shipped by have come and gone, as apparently has communication with the executives of this company. There have been claims by Greg Gagne in an interview, apparently, that tariffs are the blame, but his explanation doesn't really account for how tariffs work or who owes what money where. But there have been a lot of excuses.
Or also what happened over the last 2 years before the tariffs came up.
But there's a lot of people who have paid money for figures of classic wrestling stars and TNA stars who now think they may not get them. What are your thoughts on this whole thing from your vantage point and the knowledge you have of any of this?
Well, I'm not trying to bury Greg, but he's doing a good enough job of that himself. And I'm a little cranky with him for almost costing some friends of mine some money. So I will give the details as best as I know them here. I have just heard recently what's been going on with all of these people upset that they've not gotten their figures. They can't get their money back. They've apparently for a year, 18 months. We're not saying that nobody's gotten any figures from these people, but we're saying apparently most of them haven't. There are threads of discussion on the internet. Are we ever going to get our pre-orders? Are we ever going to get our money back? What are these people saying? They're making fun of the excuses that Greg has given, which also included that, well, we couldn't fill the pre-orders or couldn't fill some of these orders because a lot of collectors went online and bought them all up, and now they're reselling them on eBay for up to $2,500.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, on several levels. And so a lot of the customers are mad. And I've also heard that the boys ain't got no money. And I don't want to group Magnum in this. I think Magnum got involved in all goodwill. And I think that he's possibly one that might be, wiping shit off his face that he didn't deserve. But they just, I will tell you again, that regardless of all of the uproar from the fans and not getting the figures and whatever, that we knew, and I'd been talking to you, that this was not going to end well just because of the way that it started, and it didn't add up from the beginning. And a lot of the folks know that, well, everybody knows, if you listen to this program, that I've done Midnight Express figures, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Stan Lane, as well as mine over the last couple of years on my website. And at the Midnight 4-pack, the big collector's edition, came out in September of 2023. I also at the time said that the last thing that Bobby Eaton signed before he died was the contract with Figures Toy Company to get these things in production. Over the period of about a month or 6 weeks before that, that's when Greg Gagne had gotten involved. Because, again, I'm sitting here at the house one day, minding my own business. Greg Gagne calls. And he starts pitching me that, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing. I've gotten together with one of the guys from Rimco back in the 80s when we invented the wrestling figure business and we're going to do figures. Oh, that's nice, Greg. And he starts giving me a sales pitch about, well, he wants to sign me up and he knows that, oh, these things, it's going to be great. They're going to be in stores. The quality of the thing's going to be off the charts. You know, we've already got 100 and something guys signed up or their families if they're gone.
No, quite literally, they signed up like entire families of people.
Yes, well, because the Rougeaus are a tight-knit family. So to get like Jacques Rougeau, they had to sign up like 8 members of the Rougeau family all the way to Uncle Eddie Auger, who was a name in Montreal in the 50s. The Eddie Auger figure has not been, as we know, produced as of yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see that one.
But anyway, he was trying to tell me, oh, this is going to be great. And I tried to explain to him, Greg, I've already been doing my own figures. Well, this will be bigger. No, it won't be bigger because I'm not going to do it. Because here's the thing. I do my own figures. I have a relationship with, and Figures Toy Company. I've dealt with Steve Sandberg as the owner. I guess he's probably still the owner. He's retired. He's my age at this point. But I'd been dealing with him since the 90s when I worked in the office in Titan. So I knew him and knew that he was a guy that wasn't going to tell me a bunch of shit, blah, blah, blah. Had a contract, and I explained to Greg, I've got a contract with Figures Toy Company. They produce my figures. We're working on some things now. So I, just loved, I wasn't shitting all over his thing. I was trying to be nice. I knew it wasn't going to work, and I wasn't really concerned about it because it didn't have anything to do with me. But that's what he said. Well, what about your boys, the Midnight Express? I said, well, I'm working on a thing right now where we're putting this into production with Bobby, Dennis, Stan, and myself. And, oh, well, that's what he said. We've already got Stan Lane signed up. I said, what? He said, oh, yeah, we saw, because I guess Magnum was at one of the Charlotte Fan Fests, and Stan had come down, and he said, oh, yeah, we got Stan signed up. We're going to do the Fabulous ones. I said, wait a minute. You've got Stan signed up, but you're going to do the Fabulous one? I said, that's like signing up Keith Richards and doing an expensive Winos set instead of the Rolling Stones. Why? Well, we were going to do the Midnight with Eaton and Condrey. All right. Well, now I'm panicking because I'm thinking, oh, my God, some way or another, they have conned Stan into signing something, and it's going to be hell to try to get this all straightened out. And that's when I explained to him, I said, Greg, I said, I understand, again, for a lot of these guys that don't have a platform, or for the families who are looking for extra income but wouldn't have the wherewithal to jump both feet into this thing. Yes, you'll be doing the boys a service, but with me in the Midnight, because we are dealing directly with the manufacturer, selling it on my platform, the talent will get the money without involving middlemen. So we will come out, specifically us, better than if we do your deal. I'm not poo-pooing it for everybody else, right?
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, that is one of the things that separates you from just about everyone else. A lot of people will get a modern figure, a retro figure, whatever you want to call it, made. They're just someone who signed up and they're going to get a figure and hopefully a royalty off the sales of that figure. You're actually a partner in the figure. That's the difference. You are the toy company, for lack of a better term, for your own figures.
Well, and that's what I was trying to explain to Greg, that I know that if a product is manufactured, you've got to sell it for more than the manufacturing cost, but also with what he was describing, the rest of the process, the stores or the outlets or who's selling them or how they're being distributed, all the rest of those people are not going to contribute their time for the love of the game. And my thought was to make something that would be profitable on a smaller scale, but still large enough for the Midnight Express, for the actual talent that was involved, to do something instead of you. And you've heard this Same thing with PowerTown. Riggy Morton and his son have both said, we ain't got a goddamn dime. We're trying to find wrestlers that have made any money off of this deal yet. So anyway, I said, well, Greg, I'll have to get back to you, blah, 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 whatever. I call Stan. I'm like, Stan, did you sign a contract for action figures with Greg Gagne? He's like, no. I said, oh, Jesus Christ. He had seen, I think it was Magnum. He'd seen Magnum, and Magnum said, oh, we're going to do it. Well, he basically said, send me the paperwork or send me something I can look at. That was how Greg, and the thing was, it wasn't even like he had led them on, like, oh, yeah, I'll do this for sure. No, send me something to look at. And Greg is telling me that one of my friends that he has to know I'm going to speak to is signed up when he ain't signed up. So I said, as a matter of fact, I said, did they send you the contract yet? And he said, no. I said, well, tell them to send it to you and then send it to me. So they did, he did, they did, and he did. And I looked at it, and just without knowing the cost of each individual figure or the retail price point or the manner of distribution, just from the royalty rate in this contract from this company that, to my knowledge, it didn't even exist yet or had just been formed, they would have had to sell $2 million worth of fucking Fabulous Ones figures for Stan Lane to make $50,000. And I said, well, so no. So point being, this was the exact same time, July of 2021, that all this is going on. So obviously the Midnight Express did not sign up with PowerTown. We went through with the deal that we did with Figures Toy Company. The Midnight Express 4-pack collector's set with the certificate of authenticity and the autographed photo of 3 of us, obviously, and the collector's book went on sale 2 years later in September of 2023. And by the way, folks, we still have about 300 of those left. I'm not going to lie to you. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're discounted for Christmas at jimcornette.com coming up the first week of October. But the point is that Stan Lane and each member, each entity of the Midnight Express, including Bobby's family, have already made the better part of that $50,000 that Stan would have made if they sold $2 million worth of Fabulous Ones dolls. And we didn't sell $2 million worth of Midnight Express yet. But that was a big benefit to the Condries, Dennis and Teresa, for Christmas that last 2 years, for Stan and Maria, and Bobby's kids, who had just had several children of their own over the past few years. That was a big help to them, and continues to be, because every time we sell a set, they get a fucking check. But we've already had and the tag team sets went on sale the following, February of 2024. We still got a few hundred of those too, but the point is, everything's in the black. Every action figure set of the Midnight Express has been ordered, has been delivered. People have had this shit in their hands for 2 years now, some of it. But yet PowerTown, they released their first series of 6 people, which was, I think, Luthez, whoever else. They look great, but many people didn't get those. And
well, I think people got those, but the problem was, from what I understand,
they didn't get the second series.
The second series,
and part of the first series was defective because the legs would fall off.
Right. There's a rumor going around that they made 10,000 figures for the first series, and part of the reason was they made 5,000 that were defective. So I hate to laugh, but they had to make a second round of, it's our money. I hate to laugh. It's a second round of 5,000 figures they had to make, if that is indeed true.
Well, and here's the thing. Yes, I've said this on the air. There's a 2-year lead time to getting figures from China. And with the pandemic, that slowed things down a little more. But I even had the toy company ask me one time, because I think We talked about it at the time. It was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, that one of the boats was late and I couldn't make my original on
yeah.
sale date that I'd
That's
announced.
right. I remember that.
The toy company said, well, you can take pre-orders. I said, no, I'll take pre-orders for something that is 200 miles away from me. I'm not taking pre-orders for something coming from China that's on a boat in the ocean I don't know and I can't control. I'm not going to hold on to people's money.
Yeah, see, again, that's one of the things that separates you from everyone else. You're the talent, you're also the store, and you sell the inventory you have. You don't take a bunch of pre-orders and then order as many pre-orders as you have, which
and I
seemed
also
to be the
heard,
PowerTown plan at one point.
well, I heard at the start of this thing that they were underfunded, that they didn't have the money to make whatever they had originally planned to make. That's another thing is, I'm sorry, but I knew exactly what all these things were going to cost before I committed to it. And I knew that I had the money to purchase everything in total before I put anything on sale. And yes, there's been times where people waited a couple months to get their figures only because we had 1,800 fucking orders and I was signing each one of them to order. So what do you want? An egg in your beer, whatever. But this has become just a big mess. And when you think about it, again, that's why I said it wasn't going to work from the start, because when they're signing up 200 individual wrestling personalities, if they're doing figures, 6 different figures in each set, even if everything was coming through, everybody was getting their figures on time, everybody's money was taken care of, how long is it going to be before number 186 gets his figure? A lot of these people ain't going to live that long under the best of circumstances. So, I'm sorry that things seem to be falling apart, but there's a lot of people mad, and it seemed like it could be avoidable because I think they just went into this with grander plans, thinking that they were a little big for their britches and that there was going to be not only more demand possibly for some of these people. I don't know that Eddie Auger is going to sell a ton of figures.
Yeah, see,
but
that's part of the issue right there. Yeah.
That, if they did indeed run into problems with getting the product from China, they've been in business for 4 fucking years and not a lot of product has come through yet. And the math don't add up that if you'd taken people's money at retail, you can't pay wholesale plus tariffs. Help me.
It doesn't add up. I saw recently an online post from a wrestling figure message board where I believe Sean Ing of KWK, we've talked about his figures in the past, he did the Mantar figure. He volunteered to go. He's over there. I'll go to the factory. You want me to help you guys out and look around? Never heard back. At the same time, apparently PowerTown also signed up. When you signed the contract with PowerTown, there were also t-shirts. So they have the rights to use the likeness of various wrestling stars.
Oh, yeah. This was the whole scope of the thing. He's talking about trading cards, t-shirts, all kind of merchandise that we haven't even thought of yet.
Right. And Greg Gagne also said in this interview that they're going to be at Walmart and Target, which is absolutely not happening. But the t-shirts...
The word Target is being used about Greg Gagne.
But the t-shirts they had made up apparently now have shown up on... Again, it's not my world, so I may get this wrong. Some sort of foreign eBay sort of site where all of a sudden there are these discounted wrestling t-shirts that seemingly were in a factory that wasn't paid, so they just unloaded them to some website.
Well, that's, as a matter of fact, one of the message boards that I was looking at from a link on another one said that that's a thing that not just in wrestling, but every once in a while when one of these toy manufacturers can't pay for the stuff, it goes unclaimed, they ship it to some clearance place and they just sell it. And nobody gets any royalties and nobody gets, and that's the thing is, Ricky Morton will tell a tall tale. So I would think if he'd gotten $100 from this fucking setup, he would have said it was $10,000. And he said, I ain't got a goddamn dime.
Yeah, and when you think of that first series, who got a royalty? Luthez, Vern Gagne. Who else was in the Bruiser Brody? Stan Hansen, now he's alive.
Yeah.
Kerry Von Erich.
And Magnum TA.
And Magnum TA, who's a partner.
I think Magnum did halfway okay because one of the guys in the Carolinas got a bunch of figures ahead of time and paid him to sign them. So he did all right.
I have a box of Magnum TA posters from the 80s from the Keitzer collection, a box of them that I can't use. I don't need shirtless Magnum TA posters anywhere in my house. But if there's a market, if anyone's booking Magnum for an autograph show and you want to buy a giant box.
Was that the one of him next to the motorcycle?
I think maybe that, yeah.
I may have taken that picture.
Well, I'll send you a poster. Maybe you could sign it.
They had me, there was nobody, it's all in the Keitzer files. In Mid-South in 84, they needed color pictures and better pictures of the talent, and they didn't have. It was Alice Marie Nelson was in Houston, but for some reason they said, so I brought my camera to Oklahoma City where there was light in the locker room one day and took Hacksaw Duggan holding the chair. And then I did some outdoor stuff in Alexandria with Magnum and a motorcycle and Terry Taylor, the Fantastics, all that shit.
Yeah,
I just couldn't be credited.
I don't need any of those photos, whether they're credited or not, on my walls here, but maybe someone would. But we'll stay on top of this story, see what we can find out, because in one way or another, either there's going to be bankruptcy, refunds, or figures somehow show up. I don't know which one of those is more likely at this moment, but Jim...
And that's the thing. I'd like, so one more thing I'd like, just to the guys, before you sign anything, because I'm not going to mention any names, don't want to embarrass anybody, but I've had a guy chasing me in the Midnight Express for the past 4 or 5 years to sign up for his video game that he's producing. And again, I'm not a video game expert, but I know for the love of the game from some talented amateurs type of setup that has no platform. It can't be sold on a widespread basis and is one of those throwback things because it's easier to do that shit cheaply than it is to do the new stuff. And if the point I'm making is, guys, if somebody's going to give you a check for $2,500, then the normal response from somebody in the wrestling business, oh, give me the $2,500. But then you've tied yourself up and your rights up in some kind of contract for negligible money. You don't know whether you're ever going to get royalties. That's an advance against royalties. That may be the payment you get. Where is this thing going to be sold? What's the price point? Why is a large number of people going to be interested enough to pay for this item enough that I will get a significant amount of money in royalties? Is it worth tying up your rights for something? That's what you need to ask yourself. And if you're not well-versed in how things sell or what the market is these days for something, then ask somebody who is before you just say, I'll take the fucking check.
And PowerTown, if you want people to have faith in you or trust you or give you more time, say something, and don't send Greg Gagne out there to be your mouthpiece.
Greg's not doing him any favors.
He doesn't do anyone
because he thinks it's still 40 years ago and you can just say shit and nobody checks up on it.
Well, Jim, we'll see what happens with these figures, but a lot of people at this very present moment are out a lot of money. Almost a class of people, when I think about it. They may want to sue.
Boy, I'll tell you. And you know what happens when a class of people get together and they got a bitch, they got a gripe, they got a problem, they got a grievance. They find somebody with no class to fight their fight for them, and that's this man.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
For the record,
Yes,
Jim,
ladies and
he has
gentlemen.
class. Let me just, coming out of this song, let me just clarify. He has class. He does have class.
He's like an out-of-work school teacher. He has no class. He's going to get down there and he's going to bite nuts and he's going to poke eyeballs and he's going to fight in the trenches. He's going to get down in those trenches and he's going to get mud on himself. You do not want a guy who fights fair in a court of law. You want a guy who gets even. And that's the man, the myth, the legend, Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE. But it ought to be 877-50-RIP your guts out. Because that's the kind of down and dirty activity Stephen P. New is going to be engaged in to fight for your rights. He's not going to throw that title belt down and say, no, I'm too good for that. He's going to shove that title belt up the ass of the person who has wrongfully terminated or damaged you in some kind of way.
That's right. Stephen P. New, a great
He's a
lawyer.
filthy, dirty street fighter with no morals. He will do anything to a human being. He's morally bankrupt and he's a thoroughly dangerous man. Don't let him out on the streets unaccompanied. He's going to bite somebody's jugular vein out.
He'll come to Minnesota if he has to. 877-50-STEVE. Get even with Stephen, newlawoffice.com. Jim.
You know where 877's the area code for, don't you?
No, where's that?
Ass Whippinsville.